Hello and welcome to the Film Angle. I'm Alex,
And I'm Kris.
and today we have, for the second time ever, a list. And today's list is going to be a Halloween spectacular special, a spooky
Mm-hmm.
special. We are doing our top five Halloween films. We initially said top five horror films, but we thought horror is a strange genre that encompasses many things, and if you say Halloween, you can encompass even more things. So today is our
Yeah.
top five Halloween films, but not an easy list to make, I don't think.
No, I think we made it harder for ourselves by making it specifically Halloween, which is my fault, but I think, there's yeah, when I was constructing this list, I probably changed it around about 10 times and took things out, moved things in. It was so hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned this last week. I almost didn't go in so much because I feel like I don't have a top five Halloween films.
Mm,
Because I watch I never watch the same films every Halloween. I just want to watch new scary films every year. Um, they're not. I would say maybe horror films aren't always the best to revisit sometimes because when you know what's coming, it makes it less scary.
yeah.
And I just wanted to pick five films that if I wanted to get if I was holding a Halloween film festival weekend, these are the
Mm.
five films that I would use just to kind of showcase the how the genre has evolved, the different ways it can go, and just
Ah,
these are the five films that I would pick this week.
okay.
I'd probably be a different five next week, but right now these are the five that I would pick this week to show somebody and be like,
So,
Halloween, baby.
if an alien came down to Earth, he'd be like, "Oh, this is this thing called Halloween that we humans have on Earth here, and here's the five best movies that kind of sum it up." Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I don't even know if it's the beginner. It's not even a beginner guide
It's
to
the
Halloween. It's just feel spooky. This will make you
yeah,
feel a bit spooky. I don't I think
stop
that's a
saying
different one
spooky.
again. Sorry. If it was an alien that came down, I'd probably go more down the classic route.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that weird? I don't know. It's a weird list, but I have a five. I don't think they're in any particular order, but we can go for it. What about you? How did you feel about the list?
Yeah, I sort of slightly different approach. I kind of looked at it as like five movies that I absolutely adore, but probably have a different vibe. Yeah, they'll have their own sort of characteristic, and I wouldn't say two are the same in terms of what they're going for. So yeah. So we're gonna. There's a little bit of variation here. So and I've got some honorable mentions thrown in at the end because it was just so hard to narrow this down.
Nice. Okay. Wicked. Well, shall we start with number five? Did you wanna let me know your number five film, Kris?
Yeah, absolutely. This one is probably the one in this list that people may not recognize the most. It's a Japanese film called House or Hausu if you're Japanese. Um, this is a cult favorite of many film fans. I feel like, especially like when you go on Letterboxd, this is always like top 50 reviewed films, no matter what part of the year you're on. Like people keep rediscovering this classic because it's just so off the wall and strange and hypnotic and very musical, and it's bright and vibrant, and it just really captures the the quirky 70s feel that you get. I mean, it really personifies that in a way. Um, yeah, and this is a movie I love. It's about a schoolgirl and six of her classmates who travel to her aunt's country home, which turns out to be pretty demonic and creepy, and picks off the girls one by one at a time, and it is a lot of fun. I don't know if you've caught it before, Alex.
I haven't, but it has always been on my list, and every now and then
Mm.
it pops up on Mubi, and I'm like, oh, I should really find some time to do this. I've heard the imagery is just kind of really weird,
Oh
and
yeah,
and is it quite extreme at times? Am I right in thinking
extreme in what way?
in a gory way?
And Agora, yeah, I mean, like it's. I mean, you only have to look at the poster. The poster sums up the movie, which is just this like crimson red, um, demonic cat. So it kind
Yeah.
of like that kind of sums up the movie. Like there are parts of it where just gushing with red and blood and throws the kitchen sink at you, sort of horror movie. But it's weird. It's also quite funny and quirky, and it's an odd, almost a feel good movie in an odd way, because it's like watching a weird 70s pop video. It's so strange, and it's almost in this like surreal dreamscape. Nobody talks normally. It's kind of just like this odd world. Everything's matte painting. The backgrounds are all really super artificial, and it's almost just like you've just taken inside the mind of a absolutely creative 70s drug fueled genius for an hour and a half. But it's a fun ride, and it holds up to revisits. Every time I watch it, I'm like, yeah, I'm down for this. Like, it doesn't matter when it is. I could probably watch it like 10 times in a year and still get everything out of it. It's a really good movie, Alex. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's definitely one to chill out with your buddies with a few beers, get a pizza in or something. It's one of those chill out movies.
Oh, nice, nice. Do you know what? I thought it would maybe be less accessible for some reason. But I think maybe that's why I've always put it to the side. I was like, oh, am I
Hmm.
gonna have to think a lot during this horror
Oh
film?
no, no, no! It's really
But
simple.
but
Yeah.
but no, maybe not. But yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good.
And when you warning for anybody who watches it for the first time, it uses like one piece of music as a motif for the whole movie, and just changes it. It has variations of it. I swear, if you do not have that tune stuck in your head by the end of it, and I mean, like I was stuck in my head for months, and as soon as I think of the movie House, it's like it's almost like a curse, um in a good way and a bad way. So just warning to anybody who hasn't seen it before, it's gonna get stuck in your head.
Nice. Well, my number five film, I'm gonna play it safe to begin with and go for one that maybe has a bit more, is a bit more mainstream and a little bit more
Hmm.
kind of nostalgic. And my number five film is gonna be Paranormal Activity. And I know some may turn their nose up at this, but I do believe that when Paranormal Activity came out, it kind of hit me at that right age where it was kind of like, how the advertisement was like, this is based on a true story, and you're at that age where you could just start seeing 15s, and like you could go to the cinema with your friends, and like it was a scary film and all that kind of stuff. And I did go to the cinema with my friends to watch this one. It was probably the first horror film I saw in the cinema, and I must say I was absolutely petrified. Like
Yeah.
it was a scary film. And yes, it's kind of sequels have kind of diluted the brand a bit, and it happens a lot with horror films. Like the kind of mainstream, once it goes mainstream, it just kind of they just pelt you with a new one every year until you're just fed up of it. But as much as I'm probably fed up with the Paranormal Activity franchise now, at the time this first one was something brilliant, and it was kind of utilizing the right technology at the time. If you haven't heard of it, or if you haven't seen it, it's basically a handheld, um, you know, handheld footage film.
Hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
what do they call them? What do they call them?
Found
A found,
footage.
yeah, like found, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. There's a found footage film,
Hmm.
and basically kind of was using the kind of cameras that were available in 2007 when it came out. Like it was the start of GoPros and like cameras becoming more accessible to people and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And it's like this couple are kind of filming in their house, trying to kind of catch this. There's I believe the girl in the relationship has had like a demon. She says a demon's been following her whole life,
Yeah.
and basically the boyfriend is trying to capture it on camera, which essentially he does, and it's creepy. It's really
It
really
is.
creepy, and it's also one of those films where you kind of find some sense of safety in the light. So it would be a
Yeah.
day
Yeah. That's
night
true.
cycle, and in the day you would be like, nothing scary's gonna happen now. And then as soon as they turned it into night, and you'd have the night vision camera on, you were suddenly like clinging onto your
Hmm.
chair, just
Yeah.
like, oh god, what's gonna happen next? But yeah, I mean, for me, this was a film that truly did scare me, and I think take away the kind of baggage that the franchise that it's a franchise now and all that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. At the time, this was quite a breakthrough, and kind of petrified a lot of people, including myself.
You can't really understate the fact that it was such a phenomenon. You
Yeah.
know, I remember when it came out, and it takes me right back. I remember being at a sleepover watching it for the first time, and there were about three of us. You know, none of the parents were home, and I was in a stranger's house, and I was watching this, and I was probably about, I'm a couple of years junior of you, but we were about 12 years old, I think, at the time, and I remember afterwards, and I can't remember any time after this. I don't, maybe it's a maturity thing. I remember creeping upstairs by myself to go to the bathroom in his house, and it was pitch black, no lights on, and I was scared. I was scared of my wits. I remember like trying to get down the stairs as fast as I could, and I'm not gonna pretend, raise my nose up at this movie or anything. I think it did its job. It's really effective. I remember like the time lapse stuff where she's like just standing
Mm.
over him, watching him sleep, and like you see hours pass, and it's done really, really effectively. I mean, like like, he wouldn't be creeped out by that. And you got this no soundtrack really in existence. I remember from this movie, it's all just kind of
Yeah.
like white noise, and that works on you as well. So it's it is an effective movie, and I appreciate the bravery of that choice.
Well, it was so according to Wikipedia, it was obviously an independent film to begin with. It was shot for about £15,000 before being picked
Mm,
up by Paramount, who then threw a bunch of money at it in post production and kind of changed the ending.
mm.
However, it was still a very kind of small budget on it. And it made 193.4 million at the box office, and it is still the most profitable film based on return on investment. So there you go.
See, that's horror for you in general, though, isn't it? Like, you can make a pretty cheap movie, and it can, because it's so cheap and people really connect with it, or really kind of sparks a generation. You can they just continue to profit off it. It even happened in the 90s when you have the VHS revolution and everything, all the videotapes, and everybody was just buying these videotapes because of word of mouth, and that's the power of the genre.
Definitely, definitely, and it wasn't the first found footage film ever, but I think it, like your Blair Witch and stuff were kind of the ones that did something in that genre with it initially, but it hit the right technology at the right time, I think, and really kind of made a statement. But there you go. That's my number five.
Brilliant, Alex. I'm gonna go with something more conventional. I'm sure every listener has heard of this film, or you know, probably. I'd be very surprised if someone doesn't like this movie, because it's kind of universally loved, and it's a Kubrick. It's a Stanley Kubrick film, and it is The Shining, starring Jack Nicholson. So, this was a movie I don't know about you. I grew up on. I know your parents were quite strict, probably rightly so, and restricted your viewing as a kid. But little Chris from about 7 years old was watching these sort of movies every single year, even if it wasn't Halloween. Um, I'd be like, "Dad, can I watch this?" And he'd be like, "Yeah." And then we
Yeah, I
should.
was definitely not watching The Shining at 7, 9. Yeah, there was no way. I don't think.
Oh, man, it's a shame, because when you're that age, or even when you get to about 10 years old, and you start to kind of be curious, this sort of thing. Oh, these things really hit you in a way that unfortunately they don't hit you in adulthood. Yeah, no, those The Shining I think is a masterpiece still to this day. I can watch this movie and peel the layers back, and you're just watching one of the greatest artists, and directors and writers in filmmaking history just kind of go all out with one of the best central performances from a living actor. I really think it really catches the tone. When I think of The Shining, I start to I get cold. I think about that soundtrack of the blowing blizzard winds in the background. There's no, it's just a hum for the whole movie that kind of gets right deep into your soul, and all the evocative imagery that stays, throughout your years. Every time you go back to the movie, you remember the movie shot for shot. It's so evocative, and without a doubt, probably one of my favorite Stephen King stories too. So I think it's, even though it's the one Stephen King movie that he apparently really hated, and I think
He did
I don't
not
know how he
like it,
feels
did
to this
he?
day.
I think it
Yes.
was quite a change from what he'd written in the book. So he even ended up making like a TV film, didn't he? Where I don't know if he ended up writing that or if he ended. I don't think he ended up directing it, did he? But he was very
Yeah.
much more involved in the TV film that actually wasn't very good, but did follow the book a bit more closely. But yeah, he was not a big fan of The Shining. He kind of, I think, Kubrick kind of stripped it down to its kind of bare bones, and was just like, these are the things I want to focus on. These are the things that kind of turn me on, and I want to investigate that.
Yeah. But you can't oversimplify the genius in that movie though, because you come
Oh
away.
no,
I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, because it is, you have to experience first time for the first time. You have to experience it firsthand, and I come away with that movie. There's a lot of layers going on there for something that's so simple, and it does make you think. And the ending especially can, if you haven't seen the ending before and you're not aware of the discourse around it, you haven't had a conversation with somebody about the ending before, it runs circles around your mind for a few weeks. And yeah, if anyone hasn't seen it, I'm always rushing to kind of have a first sit down with them and just kind of get their reaction. So yeah, The Shining was a really easy choice to put on my list.
nice.
What about your number four, Alex?
So my number four, I think I'm going to go for the 1972 film Sisters, directed by Brian De Palma. Have you seen this film, Chris?
I have not seen this film.
You have not seen this film. Okay, it is. So this is where horror goes sometimes a different way, and you get kind of B movie horror, and it gets corny. But I kind of love the corniness. And Sisters is basically a film about a separated, conjoined twin suspected of committing a brutal murder, and it's witnessed by like a newspaper reporter in New York. And
Hmm.
she kind of goes on this mission to kind of find out what's going on, and who these sisters are, and why one of them might have murdered somebody. So it is. I don't want to go too much into it because it is one of those films that takes some pretty wild twists and turns. But it is absolutely brilliantly shot. It's
Hmm.
very bright in your face, and it's Brian De Palma, so he's very good at the
Oh
tension,
yeah.
and he's very good at like bringing in these really unique shots. It's the 70s, like we were speaking about with images last week. A lot of zooms, but also he does this thing where he split screens a lot of the shots. So you'll have a shot. So like I would the kind of clip that you can find on YouTube is a shot of the person who's just been murdered, and he's kind of like still in his dying desk, crawling to the window, and then that's one half of the screen, and then the other half of the screen is from the point of view of the reporter who is in the like the apartment's the other side, and she kind of sees his hand kind of going up against the window as he's trying to like find some form of help at
Hmm.
all, and that's how she witnesses it. And there's a lot of these kind of split screen shots in the film, and they're really, really well utilized.
Right.
But it's one of those films that just gets wilder and wilder. And yes, by modern day standards, it's not that scary. But it's
But
it's creepy and it's weird and it's full of like really dodgy acting and all kinds of stuff. And it's not very long. I think it's 90 minutes. And
mm,
I just had an absolute blast when I first watched this film, and it's stuck with me ever since. It's one of my favorite Brian De Palma films. I think it's just so quirky and
wow.
weird and trashy, but in like a really good way.
That's a big statement. I actually I feel really bad because I actually even haven't even heard of that film, even though I'm quite aware of Brian De Palma and his work. Scarface and Carrie. Even like Carrie could have even made this list today, and he was really at the forefront of filmmaking in the 70s. He was like he was kind of shaking up the scene, and a lot of people were kind of afraid of De Palma because he was a little bit out there, both off screen and on screen. No, I definitely have to check that movie out. That definitely sounds like up my wheelhouse. And it said the magic thing, 90 minutes. So with busy working schedule at the minute, that we might be
I
able to
think
squeeze that one in.
it's one of those kind of like films like there's a lot of these kind of horror films in the 70s which are pretty much B movies, but this one just really stuck with me. I just you're kind of laughing, uh,
Yeah.
but with it in a way,
Mhm.
not laughing at it, and maybe that's why it's not as well known a Brian De Palma film. But yeah, I mean, I thought I thought it was a lot of fun. Um, and according to Wikipedia, there is a remake of it from 2006. So I don't know if that's
Oh,
any good, but I enjoyed the original a lot.
nice. Well, for my number three, if we're moving on, I decided to go for something a little bit more modern because I think it's very easy. You know, all the classics kind of solidified themselves in the 70s and 80s and in our psyche. And we, like Christmas movies, like classic Christmas movies, we watch them every single year and we've put them in our sort of rota. But I've decided to go for a bit more modern one that I think is already slid into the yearly cycle for a lot of people who love Halloween. And that is the comedy film from New Zealand by Taika Waititi, What We Do in the Shadows. And
Nice,
I
yes.
yeah, I think I'm really eager to catch up with the TV show because
As am I. Yeah.
some people are saying that it's even better, and if that is truly the case, then I'm going to absolutely love it. I remember What We Do in the Shadows came out in 2016, and I think it kind of was one of those movies that kind of built up its momentum as a talked about classic. I'm a sucker for the mockumentary scene. I love mockumentaries that come out of Australia and the UK. Even like it's sort of not a mockumentary, but I like things like Parks and Rec and The Office that come out of the US. It's just something that always tickles my funny bone. But I think it's something about Taika's sense of humor that is so dry, and once you mix that with the silliness of vampires, and there's a lot of nods to classic vampire movies in here, and it's just so on the cheap, and it just showcases Taika at his purest form. I love Taika. I still don't think he has reached the heights that he reached in this original sort of not his debut film because he's done a few before that, but his sort of biggest initial hit that
This
without What We Do in the Shadows he probably would not have been in the Marvel scene. It's kind of what got him noticed, right?
It pushed him into stardom, right? Like this was his big breakout. Like I don't think I'd heard of Taika Waititi before this, and then
Mm.
afterwards it was like, who is this guy? This is hilarious.
And then we retroactively went back and watched his earlier movies, and then they became popular. He kind of overnight became a success. And yeah, I just remember, every time I went to a new friend's house or I went to a family member's house who hadn't seen this movie, it was like the first thing I wanted to show them because I just wanted to watch, probably not even watch the movie. I would just be staring at them, just trying to see what the reaction was.
Such
um,
a good film to show people. I know I definitely showed M, and then I showed my parents it and stuff like that. It was just one of those films. It's like,
mhm.
this is funny. You're gonna really enjoy this.
Yeah, and you come away with so many quotes that I'll probably be saying until until my grave. To be honest, there's so many funny lines in this movie. Um,
Werewolves, not swearwolves.
yeah, no, it is a classic movie. I would love to see Taika just go strip it back and go back to his roots here a little bit more. Revisit this or something, or do a werewolf sequel or something because I think this is where he truly shined. And yeah, I'll be watching this movie for years to come.
Yeah, so my number three is going to be 2018's remake of Suspiria.
Oh,
Yeah, and
controversial.
and this was I was umming and ahhing about this film on my list, and so I decided to chuck it on over the weekend. I'd actually had like the Blu-ray just catching dust in my cupboard for a while. Like I bought it a long time ago, but never actually watched it. I was like, this is the time. I'm umming and ahhing about it going on this list. I'm gonna chuck it on. I remember really liking it when I saw it in the cinema. And
Mm.
I was just as kind of infantilized by it watching it on the Blu-ray again. Uh, it's one of those films that kind of feels sacrilegious in a way to even attempt to remake the original, as it's so beloved by so many people. But you put it in the hands of a very um, brilliant director like Luca Guadagnino,
Yeah.
and it turns into a different thing. It's a completely different beast, I would say, to the original. Obviously, shares a lot of themes and stuff like that, but this almost, Guadagnino has kind of made an art film out of Suspiria, where Suspiria was very much a B movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's fair to say.
and this is very much an well, I would say maybe original Suspiria is a B movie that is like almost breaking into the art scene, and
Yeah.
this is an art film that's almost breaking into B movie. It's kind of
Hmm.
got some of the sensibilities, but also it's kind of like gorgeous and eerie, and it is like this constant nightmare, this kind of set against the backdrop of like divided Berlin and stuff like that. And it's just eerie and creepy, and it's got these incredible dance sequences in it that kind of are used to they're almost like witches' curses. The whole film is about
Yeah.
whether these witches have kind of taken over a dance studio in Berlin, and it's weird and gory, and it's got
Yeah.
some incredible performances from Dakota Johnson, Tilda Swinton, who plays like three or four characters in this.
Yes. Very
Like
well. Yeah.
it's really out there in terms of how it goes about things, and Mia Goth, who's now kind of like finding fame in the X films and Pearl and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
uh yeah, it's just unsettling,
Mm.
and then a beautiful score, should I say, as well. Radiohead's
Tom York. Yeah.
Tom York. So yeah, and a this kind of eerie song that follows a lot of the film, and it's just I just there's something about it I can just kind of sink into it, and it's this eerie
Yes.
nightmare
Very
of
unsettling.
blood and gore. Oh, super unsettling, super unsettling. But yeah, it's a different beast to the original. And I think it just shows, you
Yeah.
can go from B movie to art, and like they can interchange each other in such strange ways with different hands, and it's not a slam against the original or anything like that. It's just this is just a different
Yeah.
beast, but kind of it
It's
is
interesting because
deserved of the Suspiria name at the same time.
it's interesting because I would say you have a lukewarm relationship with the original from our conversations that we've had in the past, and which is interesting. You know, you come out of the remake. So like I mean, but that's a testament to the remake because how many remakes can we say that are completely different to the feeling? This one's got way more of a political backdrop to it as well. It almost uses the post war landscape of Berlin as a setting where the first movie, the original, was more just like a fantasy surrealist. This could be set anywhere thing. It's one of those bilingual movies where it's a multi international cast, and the original is more just like watching a very eccentric, beautiful painting for nearly 2 hours. Where this is a bit more thoughtful and a bit more trying to get into the characters, and there's some harrowing stuff laced in this movie, and it's kind of funny stuff too. It plays around with it, and I think that's testament to Luca Guadagnino as a filmmaker. He's very playful, and he likes to surprise us, and he shakes it up every time, and it's one of the things that's really exciting about the movie.
Definitely. I don't think he's done a bad film, has he? I'm trying to think of his like filmography that I've
I
seen,
know. I'm really
and
excited about his new one as well. Bones and All looks absolutely great.
yeah, he's definitely one of the kind of like most exciting directors working right now. And
Hmm.
oh man, I would have loved a sequel to Call Me by Your Name. It's one of my favorite films, but I don't think it's going to happen now with all the Army Hammer stuff
It seems
that's
like
been
it is
going on.
absolutely dead in the water. That sequel
Ah,
is
such
never
a
going to
shame.
happen. I
Such a
know,
shame. I
because it would
would
have
have
been
loved
great.
that. It would have been so good.
But the problem
Um,
is, though, you got to show that Timothy Chalamet is, like 10 years older, and that guy's gonna look the same in 20 years. I think he's still gonna look like a 10-year-old.
it's true. It's true. Uh, yeah. I mean, maybe you cast the Army Hammer role and come back to Timothy Chalamet in 10 years and do like a Before Sunrise kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
just
may
change the
or but
hairstyle.
I'm still happy we get the original film because I really do love that film. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, I can't wait to see Bones and All.
So, to cut a long story short, if anybody hasn't seen any of either the original or the remake of Suspiria, you should definitely watch both. because they're both great
Yes,
movies.
100%, 100%.
Right, so this takes me on to my number two. I'm gonna really mix it up a little bit here because, as you know, Alex, I really love animation, and I always like to, if I've ever doing a list like this, I like to tip my hat to animation, and this is currently always on my yearly roster for Halloween films and Christmas, which is a big hint. Nightmare Before Christmas, directed by Henry Selick. Important to remember, it's directed by Henry Selick because I think most people would generally assume that it's just a completely Tim Burton product. Although a
Yep.
lot of the imagery is and iconography that's laced in this movie is definitely, comes from the mind of Tim Burton. We have to remember that Henry Selick is a genius filmmaker, and he's the king of stop motion, and he's the driving force behind this. So I need to bullet point that a little bit. Yeah, it's a great movie. As soon as I hit it up, it's got such great, memorable musical numbers by Danny Elfman, who is just a genius. I mean, like, you think that guy's done everything from The Simpsons to Spider-Man 2. There's no end to that guy's talent. The last 10 years or so maybe he hasn't been so fruitful, but for certainly for like a 30-year period, the guy was just hitting out banger after banger all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so his sort of feeling mixed with Tim Burton and Selleck's vibe is really laced throughout all of Nightmare Before Christmas. It is really the showcase for why stop motion is such an art form. It's only about 70 minutes long. It's not a super long movie, but it gets in there and gets the job done. It is just a beautiful showcase of Halloween imagery, and it holds up really well. I think it was made. It was towards the latter part of the 80s. It was 89 or 90 that it came out, and it's just really it's only grown in popularity. I remember walking around Disney World at Halloween time the every year in 2019, and half the people out there were just dressed up as like Sally or Jack Skellington. Everybody's got a lot of love for this, and it's almost like it's one of those things that feels like a franchise, even though it's only ever had one product come out of it. It
It's
kind
like
of
the
feels.
imagery's so iconic, isn't it? Like
Hmm.
like even if you've not seen it, you know the image. Like
Oh yeah,
I can't imagine people don't. It's such an iconic style.
yeah. I remember I had a VHS tape of a completely different movie as a kid. I never seen Nightmare Before Christmas before. And you remember when you used to open a VHS and then inside you'd see like a promotional poster for another movie? For another, like, and I remember it was Nightmare Before Christmas, and for years I used to just stare at this poster as a little kid, going like, I've never seen this movie, but I really want to see it. And then
Mm.
I used to like, yeah, I was looking forward to the day I did. But yeah, it's great, and I sometimes, even if it's like summer and it's completely out of season, I'll be humming the Nightmare Before Christmas musical numbers. It's great, and yeah, I'm looking forward to catching up with it again at the end of this month. Have you seen it before, Alex?
Yes, but it's not one of my kind of reoccurring films.
Mm,
I saw it a very long time ago. So it was a one and done for me. But so I don't know if I mean, I definitely enjoyed it, but I think it was one of those ones that I saw at school, and then I never kind of like picked up again. So it's kind of something I want to look at again. And obviously, I know the images, and but I wouldn't say I could
mm.
hum the songs or anything like that. That's where I
Is where
don't
you
have
draw
the
a
same
line.
kind of. That's where I draw the line. It's where I don't have the same nostalgia as you, I guess. A different setting and maybe different expectations. But yeah, I remember thinking it was cool. So yeah, maybe one to stick on again.
Number two for you, Alex.
My number two is uh Malignant. I am going for
Ooh.
a very modern day horror film, and it is probably the most recent horror film that really, really kind of struck a um I don't know.
It's
No,
exciting. It gets you pumped, doesn't it?
yeah, I think that's what it was. I was kind of like pumping my fists in the air at points in this film. It's one of those films that like presents itself as something really spooky and then kind of turns into again that more kind of B movie corniness, but
Mm,
in like a
yeah,
really
definitely.
really fun way. And in a way, it I think it would be a really good double bill with Sisters. It shares a lot of themes from Sisters. Maybe there's something about these
Okay.
films that really there's some kind of themes in there that really like just take my fancy. I'm not sure what it is, but I really enjoyed *Malignant*, and it was directed by James Wan, who's kind of a bit of a uh, a modern day horror dude, isn't he? Like he's
Yeah.
kind of he directed Saw, he did the Conjuring films. These are kind of like very. I mean, I don't know if Saw's a well regarded horror film, but it kicked off a major franchise
I think the
again.
first one is, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And but yeah, *Malignant* was just like this left field film for me that kind of came out of nowhere. The trailer pitched it as one thing, the film itself is another. How to describe it?
I know
A
how to describe the
girl.
last 20 minutes.
Very Matrix inspired final 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's
Again, one of those films you don't want to spoil because it's just kind of like bonkers the route it goes down. But it kind
hey,
of hits that
I'm,
giallo horror stuff again, doesn't it? It's kind of got a bit of that.
mm,
It's very
he's his
big
his
and
his camera shots, his cinematography is very fascinating. It's like, when you go on your iPhone and if you like do the zoom out feature, it's like everything is shot in zoom out all the time, and it's got this like tunnel vision. Whenever you got there's a chase sequence. I remember in this movie, I only seen it the once, so I'm going off my memory here. But when they're going for this industrial area, it looks like it's all pipes and guttering and everything like that, and it's all like in the zoom out, and you really get this fluidity of movement. It's kind, like a lot of it's very reminiscent of the movie before. Was this movie before Aquaman? I think.
no, it was after Aquaman. It was last year. Came out last year.
No, sorry. I mean, was this after Aquaman? Is what I mean.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was after Aquaman. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it reminded me a lot of that. He likes to be very playful with the camera. It's just like in The Conjuring, where you get you think you're going to watch a very like superficial by the books movie, and then the camera moves in ways that you don't really expect it to, and it's kind of half the fun of it. He's very like creative.
Yeah, and I think as well, like post The Conjuring, James Wan was like, just throw everything at the wall, throw everything, because The Conjuring is like a horror film on steroids. It's every trick in
Yeah.
the book, because I guess the budget as well. It was just like everything's dialed up to 11, and here again, it's
Mm.
like I'm just gonna throw everything at the wall and go crazy with this. It's about a woman who has visions of murders that are happening in her city, whilst at the same time she has had this kind of voice in her head of like her dead sister, right? If I remember rightly,
Yeah.
like there's videos of her, like the marketing for the film was very much like videos of her at her birthday saying, like so and so is here right now, and
Yeah.
she doesn't like that you said that and stuff like that, like this really unnerving stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's kind of one of those films. If you haven't seen it, like go out and watch it because you don't really want to be spoiled on the kind of weird direction it takes. I've only seen it once, but I really want to see it again because I kind of like I was just so taken by it. I was so in love with how crazy it goes, and it hits the B movie vibes, it hits the
Yeah.
giallo horror
Stilted
vibes, and
performances.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, very stilted, but like in a really kind of endearing way.
Oh yeah. No, you
Maybe
completely from the opening scene, you get what it's doing. Yeah.
definitely, and like I said, sisters in this movie would be a brilliant double bill, and maybe that's showing something about my like this list is showing the kind of horror I'm into. Something that's like a little
Mm.
bit scary and a little bit funny and a little bit corny.
Oh man, it's so hard. I really want to spoil the last act. The last act is like where it keeps you or it loses you, and it keeps me here.
Did
The
it
last
keep
act
you?
is
It
just like
kept
really,
me.
yeah. Yeah. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. If you replace Daniel Radcliffe at the ending with Keanu Reeves, is basically what happens here. But no, that's a great pick, Alex. No, good. It's very interesting. You're picking a lot more like modern ones, which I didn't think this list was going to go like. So that's good.
I
Um,
just wanted to get a mix, It was like a mix
hmm.
of films that have really like stuck with me. Um, there you go.
Well, I think because it was so hard for me to narrow this list down, I'm going to throw in, before I get to my number one, I am going to just throw in five little quick honorable mentions here because and
5?
because it was, I'm not going to talk about them all. I'm just going to list them. Don't worry. People do not want to listen to a 10-hour long podcast. I'm totally aware of that. But one of them was Suspiria, which you already mentioned. That was in my honorable mentions. I was really, but I was leaning towards the original because I'm a big lover of the original, and even though
Yes, you are.
I'm a big lover of the remake too. They're both, in my mind, they are both worthy of a masterpiece status, which is, how many remakes and originals can you say that for? So doesn't
Yes.
matter. Don't listen to me. You know, watch both of them. They're brilliant. I also went for John Carpenter's The Thing. It was really hard not to put in this. I actually only watched. I'm sorry to say, I only watched this movie last year for the first time, and
I've
I
not
felt
seen it.
stupid. Dude, I felt stupid for never seeing this before.
Yeah.
My jaw was on the floor the whole way watching this movie. The body horror on here on display puts Cronenberg to shame. It is off the chain. It is crazy. You see some of the most deplorable things that can happen to a human body in this film, and it is both disgusting and cheer inducing. It's a great movie, and if you haven't seen it, please. It's got our man Keith David in there, so you got to watch it.
I was thinking of maybe watching it next week, so maybe a future episode we can chat The Thing. I really want to see it, and I was thinking of trying to plan it in next week, no doubt.
Definitely get it fit in this Halloween season. I'm gonna throw in, because I like my musicals. We've already established that Little Shop of Horrors was a really hard one not to put on this list. Yeah, I'm a big lover of this show. It's got the lyricist Howard Ashman, who worked on this, who obviously did a lot of great work with Disney, with The Little Mermaid, and Aladdin before he passed away. And I'm a sucker for that sort of like hero's journey musical, and it's such a nod to B movies of the 50s and 60s too, and it's got that bebop sort of like feeling to it. Little Shop of Horrors is one of those ones. It's such a sweet film, and it always puts a smile on my face. And Steve Martin playing the evil dentist in it is is one of the funniest things you'll ever see. His music number, especially, it knocks you out of the park. This one is a bit of a nod. My last honorable mention is a nod to my dad, and this is probably the horror movie I watched the most growing up, and was the hardest one to leave out of my list for sure. It was Dog Soldiers,
Okay.
um, which is, if anyone hasn't seen it, is a very low budget British werewolf film, which centers on a group of SAS, type infantry that are going through Scotland on a training mission, and they are rudely interrupted by a pack of werewolves. And it is so good because it is low budget, and you feel the coldness of those Scottish Highland woods. It is so clever with its limitations. Most of this movie is just a bunch of werewolf heads on sticks that they very like cleverly edit and work around, and it is such a good movie. It is like anytime I show anybody this, they have a really good time. And yeah, and I think Neil Marshall really showed talent with this film, and I still think to this day he never has made a film that even gets close to the heights of Dog Soldiers. So yeah, it's a British cult classic, and I thought it had it was a really hard one to keep up my list. But if you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing.
Nice. Nice. I mean, if off the top of my head, if we're doing honorable mentions, Chris, I would
Yeah, go
maybe
for it,
chuck
man.
in I would definitely chuck in the Saw films.
Oh yeah.
I do have a little bit of love for them. The Final Destination films are a lot of fun. I think they're great.
Oh yeah,
You
they were
know, you're
hits. Yeah.
talking about Cronenberg. I'm thinking The Fly. If you could classify that as a Halloween-y horror film, the body horror on that
Mhm.
is excellent and a really really kind of good story as well. And then maybe some more modern stuff like Midsommar and The Witch and stuff like that. Like those are all films I really really love.
Yeah.
I nearly put
Midsommar definitely made
Midsommar.
Midsommar was definitely made my girlfriend Lauren's list. She's a big fan of that movie, so yeah.
I was really close to putting it on my list. I absolutely love that film, but I don't know if the summariness of it uh,
I know what you
is
mean.
like puts me in a Halloween spirit. I don't know. It's like one of those horror films that actually doesn't work in Halloween, I don't think.
Yeah.
Potentially.
I watched that movie on New Year's Day. It was my first exposure to that. So whenever it suits you is fine. But yeah, I get what you mean. That's kind of what made me hesitant to sort of include it too, because I do love that movie also.
A summer slash spring scare, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, go
An
on
Easter
then.
scare.
Yeah. Take us to your number one.
Right, okay. This was no question for me. This was one of those movies that got me through my teenage years. And I feel like a lot of people, this is like a rite of passage for them when they're teenagers and really awakens something inside them. And that is the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Ah.
Have you seen it, first of all? I don't feel like you have.
I haven't.
You
No, I
haven't.
swear. No, I haven't. I haven't.
It's
I
on
feel
Disney
really bad
Plus.
about it because like when I think about seeing it, I kind of want to watch it with a crowd because I've heard the kind of when you go watch a
It's
screening of it
infamous.
and you get
Yeah.
the fans there and all that kind of stuff. And I just like when I see it, I'm like, should I put this on? I'm like, do I want to watch this by myself? I almost need to like be actively looking for the next time they do a big screen showing of it, and because it happens all the time, and it probably is happening this Halloween in Bristol somewhere. Yeah, I haven't got around to it. No.
I watched it like every week for 6 years by myself before I watched it with anybody. If that brings any, it's it's so ahead of its time. You know, it's 1975. This came out, and it's so forward thinking. And I imagine it was very provocative for the time in terms of its depiction of sexuality and openness and willing to like be yourself. The message of the movie is to be yourself and be comfortable in your own skin and to the tune of some of the most rocket 70s musical numbers you'll ever hear. You know, it's so fun, and I think it's everybody who hasn't even seen the movie knows that Tim Curry's performance is up there as one of the most iconic performances, not even of the musical genre of the 20th century. You know, you see him dressed in the stockings and the corset as Dr. Frankenfurter, and it's iconic. You know, it's up there with some of the most important imagery of the 20th century. I don't feel like I'm hyperbolizing when I say that he is and is one of the greatest performances too. And it is just one of those things that really stuck with me. It gave me a lot of self confidence when I was a teenager. You know, to be different, to not kind of hold yourself in the same vein as everybody else because they're normal. And it is just a lot of fun. And every time I watch it, I feel like it gets me in the Halloween spirit. And also, if you're a big film lover, you know, it really tips its hat to you because first and foremost, it is a love letter to the B movies of the 50s. The opening song is just a list of all the great B movies, like Tarantula, the Attack of uh, the 50-foot woman, and it is just like it is complete love letter to those movies. And it hits, it scratches all the right itches for me, and it's great, and I hope you get around to it one day. I don't know if you'll love it as much as me, but it is something that really struck a chord and still does to
Yeah.
this day.
I think that maybe that's why I've put it off is because I didn't hit it like because I didn't watch it at that age where you can now look back and have the nostalgia and fondness. I must feel like I'm too old for it now. Like, like I
Oh no
maybe
way,
need.
man.
I think maybe next time you're around, maybe you need to like force me to watch it or something.
Okay. I can easily do it. It's on Disney Plus in 4K, baby. You'll never see it in a better way. So
Nice.
it's a good time to watch it.
Yeah. Oh man.
Just for
Yeah. It
Tim Curry
sounds.
alone, do yourself a
Yeah.
favor just to watch Tim Curry just absolutely exude sexiness and confidence on screen. It is awesome, man.
Nice. Nice. So, for my number one, I think this is we've got. I was worried maybe that like one or two of our films would cross over, but it hasn't at all. And
No,
I did wonder whether you'd put this one on, Chris. This was the one film I thought, I wonder if we're on the same page here because it kind of hits two of the genres that we really love the most, and it's just one of those films that I know we're both a very big fan of. Maybe it's controversial to even call this a horror film. I don't know. Alien is my number one
it
film.
would,
I
yeah.
think it's the ultimate kind of horror film, and it's the ultimate film that makes you go, you can do horror anywhere. You can put, the haunted house in space. You can put the monster in space and all this kind of stuff. Some might turn around and say, no, it's a sci-fi film, but I think this is scarier than it is, scarier than most horror films.
Mm,
And it's just one of those kind of classic spooky monster in space, and it's pretty
yeah.
terrifying even to this day. I think, obviously it's an older film, 1979, not massively old, but when you're putting it in, we were talking about how sisters with the modern day sensibilities might not be scary anymore, but 1979 Alien
7 years
is
shy of being
still.
half a century old, you know? It's
Exactly. It's still terrifying to this day. Directed by Ridley Scott, and he is an absolute master at kind of creating the terror and the horror and the body horror that comes with it and all the crazy stuff. Um,
hmm.
it might be the only good film in the franchise.
Oh, no,
No,
no, no,
well,
no.
you love Aliens. I forgot you love Aliens. I'm not as
Yeah,
big
yeah.
on Aliens. I'm not as big on Aliens. I just love Alien. I
Yeah.
think it's an absolutely brilliant kind of scary film. But yeah, I did this ever cross your mind, Chris, or was it too sci-fi? Maybe is this a controversial number one
Okay.
for me?
No, you were right to think in the way you did, because I was definitely kind of in the mindset of Halloween, and I thinking, I don't know what, like, it's so loose what Halloween means to you, right? And what kind of fits in that mode. But Alien didn't feel right for some reason. But I will say that I would probably say Alien is my favorite horror film of all time. And that's
Yeah.
just, it's just strange. It just didn't feel right for this list. But no, man, I'm completely with you. Alien is. I can talk forever about why Alien works as a masterpiece of horror genre. It is, it is the right choice from you. I respect that. It's great.
I guess that idea that I said about in with the list is like me trying to curate this idea, this film festival in my mind of Halloween films, and I almost like in my
Hmm.
mind I was like, I want to showcase to the audiences of this fake film festival that horror can be weird, horror can be scary, horror can be
Yeah.
trashy, arty, and it could also be set in space. Like it was just
Yeah.
like I wanted to like hit the different things, but yeah,
Yeah.
when you think scary films, for me, I can't think of anything, much more
Oh
scary than
yeah. When
Alien.
that movie starts and you hear that score just come on, it is just like, it completely chills you to the bone. It makes you feel isolated. And the title sequence, you get the little parts of the letters alien just coming up really slowly, teasing you. And that's what the movie does. I don't think you see the xenomorph, the alien, until about 30 minutes into the movie. It really, really teases you. And every time you watch the movie, you've seen 100 times, you're like, oh, when does he come? It's like, is he coming out? Is he coming out? And it teases you. And I can't imagine what it was like, for audiences in 1979 when they got to see it for the first time. And I remember, you can go on YouTube. Anybody listening out of interest, you can go on YouTube and you can watch the original trailer that came out in 78 or 79. And it shows no xenomorphs. It feels like it's a completely different movie. And it should still be the benchmark for how you make a movie trailer nowadays, because it gives away nothing but gets you super excited. And
Yeah.
yeah, I look forward to the day, if I ever have children, to not tell them anything about this movie and put them in front of it. When they're of a reasonable age, Alex. I know you're looking at me that way. When they're of a reasonable age, sit them in front of
Yeah, but
this
a
movie
reasonable
and
age to
just.
you might be 7 by the sounds of it.
It depends. It depends on the kid. If they can take it, fair game. But no, it is one of those movies that is super exciting. I actually got the chance 2 years ago to watch it on the big screen,
Mm,
and it was a great experience. It just holds up every single time, and I agree with you that it is the best Alien movie in the franchise. I do love Aliens. I think it's a great movie too. But Alien is the pinnacle of both Scott's career and the sci-fi horror genre. So great pick.
So those were our top 5 Halloween films there. Hope you enjoyed our lists. Again, two very different lists.
Mm,
I, you know, maybe we should do more of these. It's always quite interesting to kind of like see what where your mind goes to, Chris.
yeah, same for me.
When
Yeah,
we come up with these ideas. But yeah, next week, guys, we are going to be taking a little break, just a 1 week break, just while we are busy, pretty much,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then, but don't worry, we will be back. We will be back the week after next, with a new episode of the Film Angle. Um, but yeah, remember to follow us on Instagram, to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and kind of share us with your friends and family, and just get more people listening. So that would be
yeah.
great.
And tell us if you've seen the movies that have been included on our lists, or if you haven't, tell us which ones you're interested to see. And if you disagree with us, call us out and tell us why you hate those movies. That's any conversation is really appreciated.
Definitely, and tell us your top 5.
Mm,
On Spotify, there's a Q&A feature, so you can write in. If we pose a question, which we will, I'm sure, for this episode, you can write in maybe your number one Halloween film. Get back to us and let us know. It's always really interesting to find out. Where everybody else's mind goes to when they think of the ultimate Halloween film. So, yeah, please do that. So I'm Alex,
and I'm Chris.
and this has been the Film Angle.
Stay safe.
Happy Halloween.